and welcome to the Kankakee Area Football Podcast. I'm Steve Soucie, joined this morning by Mason Schweizer, as usual. How you doing this morning, Mason?
I am doing pretty fantastic. You really brightened the mood with that super awesome American Giants hoodie. So I'd say that the month's gotten off to a great start.
Yeah, the weather turning on us. Decided to crank out the brand new hoodie today for not only the weather for the rest of the day, but just get us going right today on a Wednesday morning. So let's just crack right into this here. Let's start with the city teams like we usually do. Let's switch it up today. Kankakee, once again, seemingly to doing what we thought that they would do in this portion of their schedule. Not a lot of problems in Week 6, setting them up for a Week 7 game here with a Bloom team that has a pretty good record, but it's a little deceptive based on the quality of competition that they've played. What are your impressions on what Kankakee has been going through over the last couple of weeks?
Well, first and foremost, it's all been on the road. The K's have not had a game at home since that Week 1 game to Nazareth. They only have 3 home games all year. So this 4-game win streak that they're on has been put together on the road. Philip Turner's really fighting his stride, coming together. He had 5 total touchdowns, over 350 total yards of offense last week. They've got another senior receiver alongside Cedric Terrell and Zeke Sherrod that stepped up lately, Deshaun Brown. Interestingly, trailed a little bit at Rich Township last week before pulling away to a 40-point victory. But I think if this K's offense, can be what it was last week continuously down the stretch, like that's kind of optimal for them. Obviously, the better your offense is, the happier you are. But with that defense that they've got, if they can get, even similar production to that, then I think they're going to be in really good shape down the stretch.
Yeah, so you're just kind of looking at it. The expectation is that we're probably going to, roll into that Week 9 game with Crete-Monee on a pretty good wave of momentum and hopefully finishing strong in the regular season and set themselves up as well as they can. At 7-2, they're going to get a decent draw in the 5A playoffs, maybe a home game. How do you think they stay focused, though, through this stretch of games where the level of competition is not that strong?
It's no different than really it's been for them the past, 5 years now? That battle with Crete, which usually comes Week 9, has been to decide the conference. I am curious, Bloom will be a little bit tougher of a challenge than it's been for them in the past. So I think that, when you're going to be a little bit more competitive, I think that helps a little bit. But you mentioned, so 5A, is that pretty firm for the K's in 5A?
Yeah, they're pretty solidly above that line right now. I'd be really surprised if they moved into 6.
Our only school that is solidly in their class, you would say right now, in terms of the city?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. When you talk about Bradley's probably closer to that 5-6 bubble. That 6-7 bubble than.
Woo!
Yeah. Oops, my bad. And then McNamara's total bubble on 3A, 4A. So, basically looking at that today, that's been released on Friday Night Drive, this week's playoff projections. McNamara is directly on that bubble. One of a couple teams in the area that are sitting directly on bubble lines. Wilmington being the other one between 2 and 3. So there's going to be a lot of machinations over the last couple of weeks. So you can't really lock in a playoff class for almost half the teams in the Kankakee area. It seems like that are going to qualify. But yeah, Kankakee looks pretty solid at 5A. So. Okay. But moving on to the next game, Bradley Bourbonnais gonna basically try to bounce back from the Week 6 that did not go their way. Playing DeKalb this week, that looks like a game on paper. The Boilermakers should be able to do that before bouncing back to play another Lincoln Way school in Week 8. A few days removed from Bradley's first loss of the season, what were you able to kind of take away from that game, and what does it mean for Bradley moving forward?
Well, I think Coach Cole would probably be the first one to tell you that you can't fall behind 3 touchdowns on the road to Lincoln Way Central. But that being said, they made it a game again. A couple late touchdowns and were able to get the ball back for one last real Hail Mary attempt. Couldn't quite get it. like you said, they've got a chance to bounce back. This DeKalb matchup last year was a doozy, and they held on for a 3-point win. The matchup between Lizelle Edmond, the receiver and defensive back for Bradley Bourbonnais, and DeKalb wide receiver Devon Grant, the Illinois commit. Really excited to see those two go at it when the Barbs have the ball. But like you said, it's a chance for the Boilers to bounce back. Something that I think they'll be able to do. And when you look at kind of the scope of the Southwest Valley Red, you've got a chance to still be right in it if you can go up and win at Lincoln Way West next week. The Lincoln Way West, Lincoln Way Central, Bradley Bourbonnais battle. I think all three of those teams, not just really good teams in the conference, but by the time we get to the postseason, whether it's Class 6 or 7A, I think all three of those teams could really make some noise.
I agree. Both of us had an opportunity to take in Bishop McNamara for, on Saturday afternoon. Another impressive performance by the Irish in defeating Marion Central Catholic. Our crack research team went back and dug out the fact that the last time the Irish were 6-0 was 1998. So obviously a return to prominence here seems to be in full swing for the Irish. But this Week 7 game is definitely an intriguing one as they travel up to Wheaton Academy. Once again, I think this is another one where we see how far this Revolution has come, because even though Wheaton Academy has lost a lot from last year's team, this is a team that's kind of demonstrated itself to be one of the premier teams in the Chicagoland Christian since it began. And so this is a big matchup for Bishop McNamara, isn't it?
Yeah, and a Wheaton Academy team that's coming off of a 1-touchdown loss to Hope Academy and looking to get back on the winning side of things. Like you said, this matchup specifically has been all Warriors as of late. They played every season during this stretch I'm about to read off, but the Warriors have not lost to Bishop McNamara since 2019, and they have not allowed a Bishop McNamara point since 2021.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that at least the latter is going to change, perhaps the former too, but it's kind of one of those cases where until you've done it, like you were talking about with some matchups earlier, like Herscher on their kind of upswing back up. Until you've done it, you're maybe not quote unquote expected to be able to do it. Although I think this Irish team and like you and I were talking about at that game Saturday against Marion Central, this Irish team really, really looking good right now.
Yeah, it really feels like they have a lot of momentum, especially on offense. It feels like they're playing with a lot of confidence there, feeling like they can, that they're a play away from breaking a big play, if that makes sense. I mean, it feels like you're always kind of on the edge of your seat because they have game breakers, guys that if you give them an opportunity, if they slip out of a tackle, that's gonna turn a 7-yard play into an 80-yard play. So it's been interesting to watch this Revolution, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain this. Definitely have 2 big games coming down the pipe here with Wheaton Academy, and then following that up with Hope Academy, who you mentioned already beat Wheaton Academy, seems to be kind of in the co-driver's seat, because as long as if Mac keeps continuing to control their own destiny, which they still do, Hope and Mac is probably going to end up deciding the conference championship. So basically, when it comes right down to it, that should be an interesting watch over the next couple of weeks for Bishop McNamara. Let's switch gears to the Vermilion Valley. Let's start with the first one with Watseka and Westville. I think Westville kind of showed that they are what we thought they were last week in that the showdown win with Clifton Central. So I would think Westville is a pretty substantial favorite in this one to keep it going. First, what were your thoughts on the Westville Central game? And secondly, how do you think that factors into this week's game?
Like you said, yeah, they are who we thought they were with Westville. They had a really tough stretch to open 2024. They had 3 losses to open the year by a combined 5 or 6 points. Since then, they went on a 6-game win streak to end the regular season last year. Now they've won their first 6 to start this season. I don't think that there's any takeaways if you're on the Clifton Central side of things, which we can talk about when we get to the Comets. But yeah, for the Tigers, and now if you're Watseka looking at what they just did to the best local VVC team. And you're Sika, you've got to be like, oh man, this is going to be tough sledding going to Westville. But they're going to have the Warriors are simply going to have to lean on their ground game and hope that they can play keep away long enough and get the couple defensive stands that would be required to win that game. But this Westville Tigers team is just rolling through the VVC right now.
Clifton Central looks like they have an opportunity for a pretty substantial bounce back. Hoopston travels to Clifton this week, and Hoopston still kind of near the bottom of the Vermilion Valley. So Central obviously disappointed with having their hopes of an undefeated regular season dashed, but this should be an opportunity for them to bounce back in a big way, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. Hoopston's one of those teams that are in the VVC that aren't in our coverage area, and so not as familiar with them as some of the other teams, but I really did think that the Corn Jerkers would have a couple of wins by this point of the season. A little surprised to see them come in at 0-6, and likely 0-7. Like you said, with how good this Clifton Central team has been rolling. So we'll see how things go. The Comets, now that we're getting into this part of the season, the last three teams that they play on the year have a combined record of 5-13, and Salt Fork, who they play in week 9, has 4 of those 5 wins. So not just this week, but I think down this entire last third of the season, the Comets have a chance to, maybe get some kids healthy that might not be through the first 6 weeks, kind of get reset and ready to make a big run through Class 1A.
Iroquois West travels to Oakwood in another Vermilion Valley Conference matchup. We have, an Oakwood team that's played pretty good football all year long. This looks like a pretty challenging one for Iroquois West, doesn't it?
Not so fast, my friend. I know you might think that I'm a little crazy, but Iroquois West has lost 2 games by 1 possession each and is really close to being 3-3. Yeah, Oakwood's 4-2. Their 4 wins have come by a 100-point margin combined, but those 4 opponents have a combined 5 wins.
Yeah.
The 2 times they've played teams with winning records, they've lost both of those games by multiple possessions. I do think that they get the Raiders this week, but I think that might be a bit of a closer game than people think. I think this Raiders team down the stretch here, a team that has 5 seniors and 20 underclassmen. This back third of the season, I think these younger kids that have gotten some experience, it's going to start to pay off, and I think they're going to be really competitive in this game with Oakwood.
We'll wrap up our Vermilion Valley talk with Moments. Obviously, a difficult game for them this week in regards to playing Bismarck-Henning, but now this has become a must-win game for Moments. After the loss to Salt Fork last week, puts them on the 4-loss line. Being in a locked conference, there's virtually no chance that they would make the playoffs if they picked up a 5th loss, even if they finished 4-5. So that Salt Fork loss has kind of put Moments' backs against the wall. And I know we've kind of talked about this. I think both of us are a little bit surprised that Moments has found itself in this situation.
I mean, they're 2 plays away from being 4-2, not just the 2-point loss to Salt Fork last week, but week 1, a 27-26 overtime loss to Westville. And that's how thin these margins can be. Like you said, playing a Bismarck-Henning team that's given them absolute fits. I think they've had a pretty big clamp on this game since what's it been 4 or 5 years since the VVC and SVC merged together, and the game started. And these 2 teams have been near the top of this conference for each of those seasons, but the Blue Devils have found a way each time. With Eric Castile, the 4-year quarterback at Moments, that kid is an absolute gamer, man, and they're not going to be done until he can't go anymore. I expect them to leave everything they've got out there, but the Blue Devils are really playing great football right now. Won 4 in a row after their 0-2 start, and it's going to be really tough sledding for Moments. I'd like to see them do it, but I'm not sure that's going to happen this week.
All right, we'll take a quick break to hear from our sponsors and be back to talk a little Illinois Central Lake football.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brenton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart is our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
Welcome back to the Kankakee Area Football Podcast. Mason, let's switch over to the Illinois Central 8, and I'll be honest with you, if you would have said before the season, what is going to be the pivotal Week 7 game in the Illinois Central 8, and you would have said that it's going to be Reed Custer and Herscher, I probably would have laughed at you. I mean, that's the reality of it. Reed Custer coming off a 1-8 season last year, Herscher a non-playoff team for several seasons, but that's where we are right now due to a couple of factors. Reed Custer with what I would classify as a mild upset based on the way that they're playing last week over Piatone with the last-second field goal. Herscher has put themselves in a really nice position to this point where this actually isn't a must-win for them, but it's certainly one that they would like to have. And on paper, based on the way that these two teams are playing right now, I think this is going to be a really good football game. What do you think?
Oh, I think this is a tremendous game. I wish that we had more reporters so we could have somebody at this game because, man, I mean, not to mention you've got the fun little side drama with former Tigers offensive coordinator Nick Klein coming back to face the Tigers. That's always a fun matchup every year. Coach Klein, especially with Coach Quick, his good buddy, now back at Herscher as the defensive coordinator. That's something fun to look at. But I just want to throw a shout out to Coach Joe Turek at Reed Custer, his first season coming over from being the JV coach at Lincoln Way East. He's got these boys playing some awesome football. Big shout out to Tristan Randall, who booted a game-winning field goal last week to beat Piatone as time expired. Really awesome, really happy for them. And like you said with the Tigers, both of these teams essentially have 4 wins coming into this. Reed Custer has yet to get its forfeit win against Lyle. So the Comets just have to get a split over their next 2 games to get to 5 wins. And the Tigers know, hey, the next one probably gets us in. So really curious and excited. This one I think is going to be super close all the way through. Whoever might be one of those whoever's got the ball last kind of games. So really excited to see what happens in that one. Both of those teams playing really good right now.
Herscher has a little bit of leverage, like I mentioned. They, if they were to fall in this game, they've still probably got an opportunity to pick up win number 5 in Week 9 against Piatone. But I'm sure the Tigers don't want to put that to chance. So it's a good situation for them to be in right now. But obviously, they want to kind of keep that momentum going, have that game at home. But I think, at least in all respects, the fact that Reed Custer has done this through the early portion of the season, nobody's looking past Reed Custer right now. Everyone is focused on the possibility that they need to. This isn't a team like last year where it was 1-8, where it was kind of a W on your schedule that you would circle beforehand. This is absolutely going to be, I think, a real dogfight. So I'm interested to see how it comes out.
Yeah, you and I both.
Yeah. So an interesting non-con game because of the situation with Lyle forfeiting their season. Mantino picked up a game. We were talking just a few minutes ago about how Reed Custer has that forfeit win in Week 9. This is where Mantino would have had a forfeit win had they not decided to schedule GCMS. Going down there to that one, it's kind of an interesting situation with that game. GCMS, a good program, a 1A program that is typically known for being pretty solid, a fast football team historically, very fast and athletic. So this is a game that I think, looking back on, on where Mantino's at in their schedule right now, this is one that they really kind of need to get in order to get themselves into the playoffs. And I don't think this is a slam dunk. So I'm not saying they regret scheduling this game. Everybody wants to play football games, and that's why the game was scheduled in the first place. But once again, putting that forfeit win on the line to play this game right now, and if they don't get this win, I think it's going to be a challenging situation for them to get themselves back into the playoff field.
Yeah, a loss here means that you're going to have to win out. I think there's still a slight chance that we get 6 teams from the Illinois Central 8 into the playoffs, but Mantino would have to win this game at GCMS for that to have any chance. I saw Mantino against Coal City last week in that game that was 55-0. Obviously, Panthers were outmatched, but man, they're banged up. They had about 20-ish healthy kids. Obviously a lot of teams get banged up at this point of the season, but they seem to be a little bit more depleted than others. And like you said, on one hand, some people might be like, well, I'm sure you wish you had the forfeit win right now. But on the other, I'm sure the Panthers are saying, hey, no disrespect to GCMS, who's one of the greatest Class 1A programs, in kind of the greater area, I guess. They're about an hour or so southwest of here. But hey, if we can't beat Gibson City, a Class 1A team, then do we even deserve to be in the 3A, 4A playoffs? That's probably some sort of argument that you'd get from Coach Haynes, who wants his kids to compete. It's going to be a really tough one. Interested to see how it goes. I mean, GCMS has been perfect aside from a loss to El Paso Gridley. But yeah, kind of getting into must-win territory for the Panthers and for presumably the team that we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation where you look at this game on paper and say, hey, this is one that we really, really need to get now. We put ourselves in this situation, got to focus up and go get it. Not a game that I don't think Mantino can win. I do think it is definitely going to be a bit of a dogfight to get it, though. Looking on to the next one, you mentioned them a little bit. Coal City at Piatone. I mean, Coal City, you saw them last week in person, and I've been meaning to, and I haven't been able to get out to see them yet. How good is this football team playing right now? Because it seems like what I'm reading about leads me to believe that on both sides of the football, they are really playing dynamite football right now.
Well, it's so weird when you have a case like that where they lose Landon Benson, who's the school's leading rusher. School's leading rusher at a school that's had a lot of really good running backs, I might add.
Yes.
And I was talking to Coach Locker, and I'm like, a lot of people probably from the outside would be like, well, they lost their all-time great running back. They're probably going to take a step back this year. But, I mean, really, they returned almost all of their starters outside of Landon, including Connor Henline, who's been an awesome quarterback. He got a little taste of it last year when Xander Mentz was out for a couple weeks. He played really well, and like a lot of cases probably would have kept that starting job last year. He knew that Xander, the senior, was going to get his job back, and he didn't let that, kind of affect him. He just kept going, and they've got so many pass catchers. They've got maybe the best defensive line in our area, even including some of our bigger schools. Offensive line too, you could make that case. They're playing arguably the best football in the ice. I mean, obviously it's them or Wilmington, but if you were to tell me that you think Coal City is the best team in that conference right now, I wouldn't have any argument with that.
So, when you look at that, on the other side, you've got Piatone now that maybe not quite in desperation mode, but this is a game that I feel like they're obviously substantial underdogs in, would need to pull out easily their best performance in the season to try to be in this game, let alone win it. So, I mean, for them, obviously a big challenge for them, getting through this game, trying to make it competitive is important. Then you got to look ahead to the following 2 weeks and make sure that you have an opportunity to maybe still get yourself into the playoff field after that loss last week. That looks like it could be really painful to that cause. But for Piatone, where do you see them at right now?
This whole conference, we look at how bunched up all these teams are. It's awesome. This pandemonium is crazy. But yeah, you're going to have to win 2 out of your last 3, right? Especially with the fact that they took the forfeit win to Lyle and lost a week of playoff points. It's 5 wins must for the Blue Devils.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, if you fall to the Kohlers, then you've got to beat both Mantino and Herscher, 2 teams that also need to win to make the playoffs. So really the playoff implications all the way around down the stretch, really in the entire conference. Piatone, they've got a slightly youngish team, relatively speaking, but I think when you get to this part of the season, that becomes less and less of an excuse. I'm sure Coach Tully would be the first person to say that. Everyone's experienced at this time of the year. But this week and beyond, I cannot wait to see how things are going to shake out in this conference.
Yeah, it's definitely been kind of a crazy ride, and it was kind of what we expected when we were heading into this season, where we just kind of looked at it with a couple teams we didn't know what to expect from, a couple teams we thought were going to be on the upswing, and for the most part, this has kind of played out kind of the way that I thought it would, where we'd have a lot of competitive games on a week-to-week basis. But one team where we haven't had a whole heck of a lot of competitive games this year is the Wilmington Wildcats, and it certainly looks like they have another one on tap this week with Streeter that is going to keep that momentum train rolling. I was looking at their stats from last week, and it seems like I almost have to check every week to make sure that I'm looking at that week's stats and not the previous week's stats, because they all look almost exactly the same. It seems like they're winning so comfortably that they don't get a lot of offensive possessions, but the ones that they do, usually they're running for about 10 yards a carry. No, that's not a mistake. About 10 yards a carry. They're every week, it seems like I look at that box and it looks like, so basically what you're saying, every time they run the ball, they're getting another first down and doing it again. So, that's what Wilmington football is, and I've continued to be amazed for as long as they've been there and run this program and been so successful. Everybody knows what they're going to do. It is not a big secret. They continue to do it with such dominance. So I would expect that continues this week and sets them into week 8 with the 6-1 record.
Yeah, I do have to say it's funny that you bring up having to make sure that you're looking at the right week. It's been a couple of years, but there was one time where I did. I was about halfway through writing a Wilmington capsule or roundup, and I'm like, wait, this is the wrong game. But the stats are so eerily similar that you couldn't really tell unless you're looking at the opponent. But yeah, I just said a little bit ago that if you wanted to say Coal City's playing the best football in the conference, I wouldn't argue. Same goes for Wilmington, obviously. Really excited for that Week 9 clash between the two of them that's coming soon.
Yeah, it's definitely been kind of all season long. We've looked at what they're doing and kind of eyeballed towards that Coal City game. It's strange because this is a game that has not been played in Week 9 for a very long time. So usually you have this game in the middle of the season or somewhere along the line. So that definitely has become something that we're looking at right here in terms of that. So moving forward, a quick peek at our 8-man football teams. I didn't actually get a chance to look at how they did last week. What do you got an update for me there?
Both of our teams are sitting through at 5-1 now. Milford Cissna Park got 374 total yards, and 7 total touchdowns from quarterback Dirks Newcomb. Meanwhile, St. Anne 5-1 last week. Grant Pomeranski had 234 total yards and 4 total touchdowns. So those two kids are balling. Milford is going to go down to Blue Ridge this week. And a game, those schools are about an hour apart, which not a whole, that's not really too far when we get to 8-man football. These teams will go all over the state. A 1-win Blue Ridge team that is. So I'd like the Bearcats' chances there, kind of similar vein. Like the Cardinals' chances at St. Thomas More, although the Sabres on a nice little 2-game win streak by a combined 132-6 tally. But those wins are against Blue Ridge, who I just mentioned has got 1 win, and then Hudsonville Palestine. And then that game that we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Souce, it's finally coming next week, week 8. St. Anne at Milford Cissna Park on a Thursday. So that game will be next Thursday. Probably going to head on down to that. I know that that's a kind of a busy day, prep sports-wide, not just football. But definitely going to have to get on down to that one.
I think we should make that a podcast field trip, you and I.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Hey,
I think so.
Paul McAndrews asked me if we were really doing that. He said that he heard that.
Yep.
And so
I think we should make that a podcast field trip. Give me an opportunity to see the alma mater in action. And I haven't been down to Milford in, probably 10, 15 years. So always a fun time down there. So, yeah, it has been a while. I've been through Milford, but for an athletic contest, I have not been there for quite some time. So back in you want to go back in the history museum, the first high school football game I ever covered, Milford High School.
Really?
Yep. So yeah, that was quite some time ago. I'm not going to tell you what year it was, but it was a long time ago. So yeah, but yep. So that's an interesting situation there for both of those programs, and that should be quite the matchup in week 8. So I think that wraps us up for this week. What do you got going on Friday night for sure, and what are you going to be checking out?
So I will be at Bradley Bourbonnais against DeKalb. It sounds like Adam Tamino is going to make the trek up to cover Bishop Mack at Wheaton Academy, a game that crosses several Shaw markets. And then we'll have Michael Savoy, some of you may know, another St. Anne grad. He is going to be covering the Bloom and Kankakee game for us this week. So all 3 city schools, this is the first time probably since week 2 this year that we'll have had full gamers from all 3 schools in the city area. So really excited about that. Some good, big, exciting games for all 3 of them. So what about you, Sue? Statewide, what's kind of got your eye?
Well, I think on Friday night, I'm torn right now. I'm thinking about maybe going to Bradley. I kind of want to see the DeKalb wide receiver in action if I have the opportunity. But I'm also kicking around going out to Herscher. That game that we talked about, I can't get that. I can't shake that one from a possibility for me on Friday night. So, I think it's an interesting week statewide because we have a lot of games like Herscher and Reed Custer, 2 teams that the win will really, really help their playoff fortunes into getting into the field, while a loss would severely damage them. So there's a whole bunch of those games around the state. There are 175 teams in the state right now that have either 4 or 3 victories. So a win this week could really shape the fortunes of those teams moving forward. So that's definitely what I'm keeping an eye on. There aren't a lot of blockbuster games out there, but there are a lot of games that are going to shape that playoff field in a couple of weeks that are happening in week 7. So I think it's going to be really good. So looking forward to that. And I think that wraps us up for this week's edition of the podcast. So have a great week 7, and we'll see you next week.